It started like every other lazy Sunday. Me in sweats, half sprawled across the floor of my best friend's room, a controller in hand, snacks everywhere, and the unmistakable smell of teenage guy, energy drinks, deodorant, and cheap cologne. Tyler and I had this tradition. Every weekend since high school, we'd meet up, trash talk over Call of Duty or FIFA, and gorge ourselves on pizza rolls like we were still 17, even though we were now both 22 and pretending to have our lives together. Tyler was, well, Tyler, the kind of guy you couldn't not like. Golden retriever energy, constantly grinning, always making dumb jokes. We met freshman year in college, got paired as roommates, and somehow never drifted apart, even after he graduated early and moved into his own place. Now he had a 2-bedroom apartment and a setup better than most streamers, an OLED screen, an overpriced gaming chair, a mini fridge stocked with energy drinks, and that beanbag chair he'd refuse to replace, even if it was flat as a pancake. I was curled up on that sad beanbag, legs stretched out toward the center of the room, watching Tyler get smoked for the 3rd round in a row. "Dude," I groaned, "you're embarrassing yourself." "Skill issue," he muttered, tongue poking out in concentration. I laughed. "You just got headshotted by a 12-year-old in Slovenia," says the guy who rage quit last week. He glanced over at me, and for a second, our eyes held. That kind of split-second glance that you notice more than you should. I looked away, suddenly aware of the way my foot had nudged against his thigh without realizing it. It wasn't the first time I'd noticed him like that. I'd been crushing on Tyler for, I don't even know, maybe since sophomore year. It came in waves, mostly harmless stuff. A glance at his arms when he wore those tight t-shirts. The way he'd stretch and his shirt would ride up just enough. The kind of dumb things that don't mean anything unless you let them. Which, of course, I always did. I told myself it was just attraction, a thing I could ignore. Tyler was straight. At least, I was pretty sure he was. I mean, I'd never seen him with a serious girlfriend. But he talked about girls often enough. Mostly in that jokey frat boy way. Plus, he never treated me weird when I mentioned dating guys. He'd even joked once, "If I were into dudes, I'd let you hit." I laughed it off like it was nothing, but I'd replayed that line in my head way too many times to count. Anyway, nothing had ever happened. Until that night. Tyler flopped back onto the floor after the match ended, groaning. "Okay, I need a break before I throw this controller through the wall." "Fair," I said, stretching my arms over my head, my shirt riding up a little. His eyes flicked down and back up, fast. Too fast for most people to notice. But I did. He rolled onto his side, facing me, his head propped up on his arm. "So how's it going with that guy you mentioned last week? What's his name, Corey?" I snorted, dead in the water. "He ghosted me after 2 dates." "What?" "But you're a catch," he said with a crooked grin. I raised an eyebrow. "You trying to boost my ego or something?" He shrugged. "Someone's gotta." There was a weird beat of silence. Not awkward, exactly, but not normal either. His gaze lingered a little too long before he looked away. "You ever wonder," he said slowly, picking at a loose thread on the carpet, "what it'd be like, with a guy?" I froze. My brain went blank for a solid 3 seconds. "What?" He laughed awkwardly. "Forget it. Stupid question." "No." "Wait," I said, sitting up a little. "Where did that come from?" Tyler bit his lip. "I don't know, man. Just, sometimes I think about stuff, I guess." He wasn't looking at me now. His fingers were still busy with the thread, his body tense in that way. You only notice when you know someone really well. My chest was tight. "Are you saying you've thought about it? Like being with a guy?" He glanced up at me, then back down. "I didn't say that." "But you did not say it." Tyler sat up slowly, crossing his legs. It's not like I'm into dudes or whatever. I just think sometimes about what it'd be like, with someone who gets it, who doesn't expect you to act like someone you're not." My mouth felt dry. I tried to play it cool, like my heart wasn't hammering in my chest. "You ever done anything?" He shrugged, then shook his head. Nah, not really. Just wondered. I nodded, unsure what to say. The air felt heavy. Then he said it. But if I were gonna try anything, it'd probably be with you. I blinked. Seriously? I asked, half laughing, half terrified. He shrugged again, but this time with that same crooked smile. You're chill. I trust you. You wouldn't make it weird. I swallowed. Depends on what anything means. He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned back on his elbows, looked at me like he was sizing me up. Then, casually, he reached out with one hand and placed it on my thigh. Just resting there, not moving, not pushing, just there. And I swear the whole world stopped. I didn't move. Not because I was frozen in panic or anything, but because, if I'm being honest, I didn't want to. His hand just rested there, casual as hell, like we were in the middle of a totally normal Sunday night and not teetering on the edge of something I'd fantasized about for years. Ty, I said, my voice a little rough. You're touching my leg. I noticed, he replied without missing a beat. His fingers gave the slightest squeeze, like a test, like he was trying to see if I'd flinch or pull away. I didn't. Instead, I turned a little, facing him more directly, heart thudding like I'd just run a mile. So, what exactly are you doing? Tyler looked down at his hand, then back up at me. Honestly, I don't know. Just felt like the right time, I guess. He said it like he was ordering pizza. No big deal, but for me it was a very big deal. Okay, I said slowly. So, is this like curiosity? Or curiosity, he cut in, and also not wanting to think about it anymore. Just wanting to know what it's like. He paused. What you're like? Those last 3 words hit harder than they should have. We sat there in silence, the weight of his hand on my thigh suddenly feeling a lot heavier. Not in a bad way, just in a real way. Like he'd crossed some line and was daring me to say something, do something, pull him back. I didn't. Okay, I finally said, voice softer than I intended. Okay, what? He asked, tilting his head slightly. Okay, try whatever you're trying. I'm not gonna stop you. That crooked grin returned, but this time it looked different. Less teasing, more nervous. Like he'd been waiting for that answer but still didn't know what to do with it now that he had it. Tyler slid a little closer across the carpet. His hand moved up, just a few inches, fingers grazing over the fabric of my sweats. It wasn't sexual, not exactly. Not yet. It felt like a test. Of me, of him, of what was about to happen. You okay? He asked, eyes locked on mine. I nodded. Are you? He let out a quiet laugh. Honestly, no clue, but I don't want to stop. Then don't. He hesitated for a second longer, then leaned in. Not fast, not dramatic, just close enough that I could feel his breath. We'd never been this close before, not like this. And the look in his eyes wasn't a joke anymore. I could smell his cologne. Clean, familiar, a little citrusy. I never realized how much I liked it until that moment. His hand moved again, higher now, and this time, I did react. I shifted forward, meeting him halfway, our legs brushing together, heat building fast. I've never done anything with a guy, Tyler whispered. I know. I don't know what I'm doing. I smiled. You're doing fine. He looked at me like he didn't believe it, like he still thought he might be messing this whole thing up. So I did something I never thought I'd have the guts to do. I reached over and took his hand in mine. Just follow my lead, I said, and then I kissed him. It wasn't some fireworks in the sky movie moment. It was soft, slow, careful, like we were both trying not to spook the other. But the second our lips touched, something in Tyler shifted. His fingers tightened around mine. He leaned in more. His free hand came up and cupped the back of my neck, pulling me deeper into the kiss like he'd been waiting for it forever. When we finally pulled apart, both of us a little breathless, he just stared at me. Holy shit, he said. Yeah, I breathed. I didn't think it'd feel like that. I smirked. Good or bad? He smiled, still dazed. Really fucking good. We sat there, forehead to forehead, neither of us saying anything, just existing in that quiet, weird, incredible moment. Eventually, he let out a shaky laugh. Okay, now what? I shrugged, still smiling. Now we figure it out. And for the first time in a long time, I saw something in Tyler's eyes that wasn't just curiosity. It was relief. Like he'd finally found something he didn't know he was looking for. We didn't play another round of Call of Duty that night. The controller sat forgotten on the rug, half buried under a crumpled blanket and a bag of unopened chips. The room felt different now. Not just physically, though, yeah, we were sitting a lot closer, but emotionally. Like we'd just stepped into some new territory where nothing felt quite the same anymore. Tyler leaned back on his hands, staring up at the ceiling, lips still slightly parted like he was trying to process everything. I can't believe we just did that, he murmured. I gave him a look. Regret it? His eyes shot to mine, fast. No, not even close. I just didn't think I'd ever actually do anything like that, you know? Yeah, I said quietly. I've been there. We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of his mini fridge filling the room. His hand found mine again, more intentional this time. Not testing the waters. Just there. Solid. Steady. It was wild how fast something could go from unthinkable to normal. His thumb brushed over mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. You ever think about this happening? He asked, still not looking at me. I hesitated, then decided not to lie. Yeah, more than once. Tyler nodded slowly like that made sense. When? I laughed softly. Pick a day. Sophomore year, when you let me crash on your couch after I got locked out of my dorm. That time we went camping with your cousin and you slept shirtless in the same tent. Every time you stretch and make that dumb little groaning sound like you're dying. He chuckled. That sounds involuntary. It's also criminal. Tyler turned to me with a grin that was way too smug. So you've been thirsting after me this whole time? Don't get cocky. He bumped his shoulder against mine. Little late for that. We laughed, and for the first time in the past hour, the tension lifted a bit. We were back in familiar territory. Banter, teasing, comfort, but now it was laced with something new, something electric, and then he got quiet again. What happens now? He asked. I didn't answer right away, because truthfully, I didn't know. I'd spent so long convincing myself it would never happen that I never let myself think about what I'd do if it did. Depends, I said finally. Are you freaking out? He shook his head. Not really, just processing. I nodded. Okay, that's fair. He turned toward me, more serious now. But I don't want this to be like a one-time thing. I mean, I know I'm still figuring myself out, but I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. And I definitely don't want to pretend like I don't feel something. My chest tightened. You do? He nodded. I don't know what it is exactly. But when we kissed, it didn't feel wrong. It felt like, finally. I didn't expect that answer. I've never really liked anyone before, he added, voice softer. Not in a real way. I dated girls because it's what everyone else did. But with you, it's different. It's always been different. I just didn't know what to do with it until now. For a guy who once described himself as emotionally constipated, Tyler was suddenly sounding a lot like someone in a therapy session. I reached over, brushing a piece of lint off his hoodie. So what now? You want to try something? He raised an eyebrow. Like, something else? I laughed. Not like that. I mean, do you want to, I don't know, see where this goes? He looked at me like I'd asked him to move to another country. You mean like dating? Yeah. I've never dated a guy before. I've never dated someone who interrupts my kill streaks every 5 seconds. Fair? he said, grinning. We sat there in that not quite sure what this is phase, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was exciting. Like we were about to press start on a whole new game neither of us had ever played before. I don't know what I'm doing, Tyler said again. Same, I replied. But I think that's okay. He nodded slowly, then tilted his head. Want to sleep over? I blinked. You mean like, not like that, he said quickly. Just stay, crash here. We can talk more. Or not talk. I don't want to go back to pretending this didn't happen the second you leave. I stared at him for a second, then nodded. Yeah, I said. I'll stay. Tyler didn't even bother cleaning up the mess on the floor. The game still idled on the main menu, forgotten, and the snack wrappers stayed right where we left them. He just stood up, stretched with a soft groan, the one I definitely mentioned earlier, and tossed a spare blanket onto the bed. You want the side by the window? He asked casually, as if we'd done this 100 times. Sure, I said, even though I usually hated sleeping near windows. But right now, I would have agreed to sleep on a bed of thumbtacks if it meant staying next to him. He tossed me a pillow. You cool sleeping in just your shirter? Tyler. What? Just being a considerate host. I smirked, peeled off my hoodie, and climbed into the bed fully clothed, leaving him to deal with his curiosity. He slipped under the blanket next to me, still in his sweats and a tank top that showed off way more of his arms than I needed to see at that hour. It was silent for a while, comfortably, surprisingly silent. The kind where you can hear the low buzz of the fridge in the other room, the muffled city sounds through the window, and each other's breathing in the dark. I turned onto my side to face him, only to find he was already looking at me. What? I asked. Nothing, he said, his voice quiet. Just trying to figure out what this feeling is. Which one? This one, he said, tapping his chest. Like I just jumped off a cliff, but I don't feel scared. I feel calm. Like I should have done it a long time ago. I didn't say anything for a second. My heart ached in the best way. You're not scared at all? I asked. He hesitated. I mean, yeah, kinda. I've never kissed a guy before tonight. Never even let myself think about it seriously. So yeah, I'm scared. But the part of me that isn't scared feels right. Like I'm not pretending anymore. We lay in that truth for a minute. The heaviness of it. The relief. I reached across the tiny space between us and let my fingers brush his. He didn't hesitate this time, just curled his hand around mine like it belonged there. I think I've always wanted this, he admitted. Not just with someone. With you. Same, I whispered. I just never thought. Yeah, he said. Me neither. Then he slid a little closer. Our foreheads touched. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't even romantic in that intense, dramatic way. It was intimate. I don't know what this means, he said, his voice barely audible. It doesn't have to mean anything big yet, I replied. We don't need labels, we just see what happens. His breath hitched a little like that thought calmed him. He nodded slowly. Okay, he whispered. Yeah, let's see. And just like that, we both drifted into sleep. His hand still wrapped around mine, our legs brushing under the blanket. No grand declarations, no final kiss before fade to black. Just two guys figuring it out together, quietly, honestly, in a bed that suddenly felt a lot bigger than it used to. I woke up before him. The sunlight filtered in through the curtains, washing the room in that soft golden light that makes everything feel strangely cinematic. Tyler was still out cold, one arm slung across the middle of the bed, his mouth slightly open, breathing slow and steady. I watched him for a second, because how could I not? His hair was a mess, sticking up in every direction. His tank top had twisted in his sleep, exposing a sliver of skin at his waist. And that arm? The one that had somehow found its way across me during the night? Yeah, It was still there, resting on my stomach like it belonged. And maybe it did. I didn't move, not because I was afraid of waking him, but because I liked this version of the world. Quiet, still, just us. No questions yet. No what-ifs. Just Tyler, warm and sleepy, next to me in a way I'd never thought possible. Eventually, he stirred. His arm flexed slightly, and his eyes blinked open in that slow, confused way people do when they're not sure what day it is. He looked at me, squinted, then smiled. Hey, hey. He stretched and let out a soft groan, then propped himself up on one elbow. Did I snore? Only a little, he grinned. Liar, I shrugged. You were cute, though. Tyler rolled his eyes, but he didn't pull away. If anything, he leaned in closer, resting his head on his hand as he studied me like I was a math problem he was trying to solve. I half expected you to leave before I woke up, he admitted. Why? I don't know, he said a little sheepishly. Maybe I figured you'd realize it was a mistake, or that I wasn't actually serious about any of it. I reached up and flicked his shoulder gently. You were the one who kissed me, remember? He smirked. You started it. I kissed you after you grabbed my leg and said you wanted to try something. Details, he said, waving a hand. We lay there for another few minutes, the morning light growing brighter, the sounds of the street outside slowly creeping in, car doors slamming, a dog barking, someone blasting music too early for a Sunday. Eventually, we had to get up. Tyler wandered to the kitchen to make coffee while I sat on the edge of the bed, still trying to wrap my head around how normal it all felt. Like I'd done this before, like this wasn't the first time I'd slept in his bed, like we hadn't just crossed a line that changed everything. But maybe that was the thing. Maybe it didn't change everything. Maybe it just brought something to the surface that had always been there. When I walked into the kitchen, Tyler was standing at the counter in his sweats, pouring coffee like he wasn't still processing a full-on identity crisis. Creamer's in the fridge, he said, without turning around. Look at you, being all domestic. He glanced back with a grin. You stay over one time and I'm already making you breakfast. I opened the fridge. No eggs and bacon? Don't push it. We sat at the table, our mugs steaming between us. He looked a little nervous now, fidgeting with the handle of his mug, eyes flicking up and down like he wasn't sure what to say next. I don't want this to be some weird one-night identity crisis thing, he said suddenly. I mean, yeah, I'm still figuring stuff out. But I know what I felt last night, and this morning, and right now. I nodded. Me too. And I don't know what to call it yet, he continued. But I want to see where it goes, if you're cool with that. I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. I'm cool with that. He looked relieved, and also kind of terrified. But he didn't pull away. Over the next few weeks, nothing and everything changed. On the surface, things looked the same. We still hung out on weekends, played the same dumb games, watched trash TV, and argued about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It doesn't, for the record. But underneath all of that, there was a quiet shift, an invisible current pulling us closer. Little things stood out more. The way Tyler would brush past me in the kitchen and let his hand linger on my waist. The way he'd look at me a second too long when I wasn't paying attention. The way our knees touched under the table and neither of us moved. And yeah, okay, we kissed. Not a lot, and never in public. But when we were alone, it just happened. Casual, warm, natural. I never pushed him. I knew he was still figuring it out, and I didn't want him to feel like he had to perform for me. I didn't need labels. I just needed him to be real with me. And he was. Honest in that unfiltered, occasionally clueless Tyler way. One night, we were at his place again. Nothing special, just a regular Friday. We'd been gaming for hours, both of us tired, snacks everywhere, controller batteries dying. He paused the game and looked at me with that same uncertain expression I'd gotten used to seeing from him. Can I ask you something kind of weird? He said. I set the controller down. Always. He ran a hand through his hair, staring at the carpet. Do you ever think about what it'd be like to just tell people? I blinked. Tell them what? He gave me a look. This. Us. Whatever this is. My stomach did a small, stupid flip. Yeah, I said. Sometimes. He nodded slowly, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. I mean, I don't know if I'm ready to shout it from rooftops or anything, but it's been on my mind. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm hiding. I sat up a little straighter. Are you? He looked at me. I don't know. I don't think so. But sometimes I catch myself looking at you when we're out and thinking, I wish I could do that in front of people. Do what? This. He leaned forward and kissed me. Just a quick press of his lips to mine, soft and full of meaning. When he pulled back, he sighed. It shouldn't feel like a big deal, but it does. I nodded quietly. It is a big deal, especially for you. I just don't want to screw this up, he said. I like this. I like you, more than I've liked anyone. You're not screwing it up, I told him. You're just figuring it out. That's allowed. He smiled, a little relieved, a little overwhelmed. Then, like a true Tyler move, he grinned and said, Okay, but can we go back to the game? Because I'm not ending the night on that loss. Wow, I said, grabbing my controller. Romance is dead. He laughed and bumped his shoulder against mine. You still like me, though. Unfortunately, I muttered, hitting restart. But the truth. I more than liked him, and I was starting to think maybe, just maybe, he felt the same. Tyler told his sister first. We were sitting on his balcony, legs stretched out on an old patio bench, beers sweating in the heat, when he pulled out his phone and stared at it for a good 2 minutes without saying anything. You okay? I asked. He nodded, too fast. Yeah, just texting Taylor. I glanced at him. Everything all right? He didn't look up. I think I want to tell her. I didn't say anything, just waited. He wasn't asking for advice. He was announcing a decision. A minute later, he hit send, and then he immediately locked the phone and set it down like it might explode. She's cool, he muttered. Right? I mean, she's chill. She always had gay friends in high school. I took a sip of my beer. She'll be fine. Yeah, he said, then took a huge gulp like he was trying to drown the anxiety. We sat there in silence, watching the sun drop lower behind the buildings. He was fidgety, bouncing his leg, tapping his fingers on the armrest. When his phone finally buzzed, he flinched like it had bit him. He picked it up, opened the message, and exhaled sharply. What'd she say? I asked. He handed me the phone. Lol. Finally. I've known since sophomore year. Love you, dummy. I laughed. He groaned, head dropping into his hands. Of course she knew. Why does everyone always know before I do? I leaned over and kissed his cheek. Because we're all waiting for you to catch up. He smiled, eyes still half hidden in his hands. Guess I'm here now. You are. He pulled me in, head resting against mine, and we just sat there like that. The kind of quiet that feels full instead of empty. After that, things moved fast. He told a couple more friends. His roommate from freshman year, one of the guys he played pickup basketball with. And each time, it got easier. No drama, no freakouts. Just surprise, maybe a raised eyebrow or two, and then acceptance. Most of them said the same thing, as long as you're happy. And he was. We both were. Not everything was perfect, though. There were still moments. Like the time we ran into one of his old high school buddies at a diner and Tyler subtly dropped my hand under the table. Or the weird silence in the car afterward when I didn't bring it up, but he knew I'd noticed. I'm sorry, he said finally, eyes on the road. It's okay, I said, even though it wasn't. It's not that I'm ashamed. I know, I just panicked. He's the kind of guy who posts gun selfies and still says, no homo, when he hugs people. I looked out the window. You don't owe me an explanation. But I guess I wanted one anyway. Later that night, he crawled into bed behind me, arms wrapping around my waist, face buried in my neck. "I'll get better," he whispered. "I want to get better. For you." I didn't say anything right away, just reached up and touched his hand. "You already are." A few days later, he did something unexpected. We were back at his place, same routine, games, snacks, movie night, and I was lounging on his bed when he pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of me. "Dude," I groaned. "No pictures, I look gross." He grinned. "You look hot, shut up." I flipped him off and he took another photo. Then he posted it on his story with a little caption, "Movie nights hit different with him." My heart stopped for a second. "You sure?" I asked, watching him tap the post button. He just looked at me, really looked. "Yeah, I am." And that was it. No announcement, no rainbow emoji, no label. Just a soft little reveal. And for him, that was everything. 3 months later, Tyler showed up at my place with a pizza and a toothbrush. I was halfway through cleaning up my kitchen when I heard the knock. He didn't even wait for me to answer, just walked in like he always did, wearing a hoodie, backwards cap, and that stupid grin he only used when he knew he was about to do something impulsive. "Hey," he said, holding up the pizza box with one hand and his overnight bag in the other. "I think I accidentally moved in." I stared at him. "Accidentally?" He shrugged. "I just realized I haven't slept at my apartment in over a week, and I don't see that changing anytime soon." I smirked, leaning against the counter. "So your solution was to bring carbs and a toothbrush?" "Well," he said, walking over to me, "I figured if I fed you first, you'd be less likely to say no." I wrapped my arms around his waist. "You're lucky I like carbs." "I'm luckier that you like me." We kissed. A soft, slow, familiar kind of kiss. The kind that doesn't ask questions, doesn't demand anything. Just is. Easy. Right. He unpacked his bag later that night and laughed when he realized he didn't bring any socks. "Guess I'll just wear yours." "You already do." Tyler settled into my life the way he settled into my bed. Casually, comfortably, and with a ridiculous amount of snack wrappers. And somehow, it never felt like too much. He still wasn't big on labels. Never called me his boyfriend outright, but introduced me as my person whenever we were out. It was vague, yeah, but no one ever asked twice. People got it. We built this quiet, low-key rhythm together. Morning coffees, shared playlists, inside jokes, late-night gaming marathons that almost always ended with us curled up together on the couch. And sometimes, in the middle of the chaos of regular life, he'd just look at me with that same expression he had the night this all started, equal parts curiosity and something softer. Like he still couldn't believe it was real. One night, as we lay in bed, half asleep and tangled in each other, I whispered, "You still figuring it out?" He nodded against my shoulder. "Yeah, but I'm not scared anymore." "Why not?" He looked up at me, eyes half-lidded. "Because I've got you." There was no dramatic ending to this story, no big heartbreak or falling out, no sweeping gesture in the rain or final scene in an airport. Just two guys who started out playing video games on a lazy Sunday and ended up building something that felt like home. No one warned me that the smallest moments, the glance, the brush of a hand, the late-night question, would change everything. But it did. And I wouldn't trade a single second of it.